Takano-san, having realized she scared Shion and I enough at this point, smiled soothingly. Then she turned on her heel, raised the lantern and began to walk again. If Takano-san left us here, we would get further away from the light. Shion and I, no matter how scared we were forced to follow Takano-san along her field trip through this ritual storehouse. We made a bad choice going into here, didn't we? I suppose we've seen a bit of everything. See? This place is interesting, isn't it? She says, raising the lantern high in the centre of the storehouse. The dim lighting didn't change, but for some reason, it felt like I was able to see all of those horrible tools at once. K-chan, look up. Shion stammered while grabbing the nape of my neck. I couldn't tell because it was so dark, but there was a lot of more tools hanging on the ceiling as well. They all looked like they were made of iron bars, but then I figured it out. Cages. For cages, they were very small, cramped cages, just for one, like a casket. If you got locked up in there, no, you wouldn't get out, you wouldn't get locked up inside. There was another tool meant for restraining people, but the iron bars would squeeze you tightly. So many big and large things of all shapes were hanging down. Takano-san's mention of execution by grilling crosses my mind. We weren't just surrounded on all sides by these terrifying instruments. Things crowding the ceilings were even hanging over our heads. There are many of these sorts of bird cages among European torture devices. Stop smiling when you're talking about torture devices, please. I'm surprised to see them in Japan as well. K-chan, is something in there? A person? A mummy? Where? Shion desperately pointed to one of the many human-sized bird cages hanging from the ceiling, but I couldn't tell which one she meant. Being that dark, there wasn't any way you could tell if something was in there in the first place. I don't see anything. You sure you're not seeing things? Shion didn't seem convinced, but without a means to confirm for ourselves, we couldn't do much but wonder. My Barakun, after seeing this, have you come to believe in it all Have you come to believe in all of it? The countless terrible rituals passed down in Hinamizawa? It's got nothing to do with believing in them. Now that I've been shown the real thing like this, there's no possible way to deny it. Even the nations of Europe, with all their beautiful landscapes and legends, are like a maelstrom during the terrible witch hunts in the Dark Ages. It's well known that the era gave birth to countless gruesome forms of torture and execution. Japan was the same way. It didn't have its own era of hellscape, like the torturous feasts because of religious suppression and things of that nature. Hinamizawa itself had such a period. It had that much history behind it. Even in Europe, and of the witch hunts, that was all far in the past, no more than a series of historical events, and in this age nothing that abnormal would ever happen. That must apply to Hinamizawa as well. Just as Europe had its dark age, Hinamizawa had one too. That's how this should be taken. Even if those things already happened in Hinamizawa, they're all long past. They don't have anything to do with the people living in Hinamizawa right now. Hi Barakun, you really do like this village. It didn't sound like she was making fun of me. Takano-san gave me a light smile. Takano-san, you're researching whether those customs survived into the present. You are, right? Shion suggested something that made my heart leap into my throat. Are you telling me that all these horrible things are still going on even today. We think it was like a moment of happiness and then they just dropped us back down. What I'm about to tell you is a secret, alright? I told you Sion-chan because you're an understanding person, but the other villagers don't want to hear it. If things go awry, I could be ganged up on and punished. Sion flashed a devilish smile as if reveling in the immorality of it. My Barakun, you keep it a secret too, okay? If this gets out, I could suffer Oyashiro-sama's curse or be made into a sacrifice. If it's the curse, then I wonder what kind of death it'll be this year. If it's a sacrifice, then will I be thrown into Onigafushi swamp while still alive? It is tonight, you know, and you have like a beaming smile on your face there. It is tonight, you know, the night of Oyashiro-sama's curse. Takano-san said, bringing her face right up close to ours, as if to say that if she had the choice, she'd rather suffer the curse. That was what she seemed to be implying. Takano-san took a fairly worn notebook out of her paper bag and began to flip through its pages. There were all sorts of references and newspaper clippings attached to them, and it had all manner of things written inside. The letters were very small and bunched together, so I couldn't tell at a glance what it was about. What I'd really like to do is search through the National Library for newspapers from the era, but here it is. A photocopy of a page from some book. Was slid into the notebook, and it too was written in small typed lettering. Like the other pages, I couldn't tell what it was just by glancing at it. This is a story that actually happened. It was around the end of the Meiji era. They discovered an unknown mangled corpse, the victim of a murder, in Onigafushi village. An old newspaper clipping attached to the page spoke of something that was no mere rumour or fairy tale. We don't have most police documents from the time anymore, so it's all based on oral traditions and memories. See, it's not very clear, but it looks like a cut-off of it. It looks like a cut-off of a newspaper from the Meiji era. Never before has there been a corpse treated it with such cruelty and inhumanity. Could it be the work of a demon? Being a copy of a copy, it was very hard to make out, but it was strange. It was more than enough to make me feel strangely tense. Near the end of the Meiji era, in old Onigafushi village, a mangled corpse was discovered. The identity of the corpse was unknown. It wasn't even in a state where it could be identified in the first place. It was missing a head, each limb was separated from the body. Skin had been peeled off the entire body, and there were markings that implied terrible torture in every place imaginable. Not only that, but the belly had been cut open by a sharp knife, with the entrails completely dragged out. The police immediately began an investigation, but since they couldn't even determine the identity of the victim, much less the criminal, finding answers was extremely difficult. You understand what it means? Do you understand what it must have been like? I couldn't imagine such a strange sight even if I tried. This was the first time that I was thankful for my lack of imagination. Well, you can imagine everything else that she said so far. The victim was skinned while still alive, underwent all kinds of torture, and was brutally murdered. Or killed brutally. The author here also thinks that even after death, the remains were divided and dissected even further, the epitome of inhumanity. I'm of the opinion of the entire process was performed while the person was still alive though. What do you think, my Barakun? He spoke in a way intended to make me imagine even more vicious things. My brain was already far over capacity, however. There was no way I could imagine anything more brutal. Then, when I broke my gaze from Takano-san's, those strangely shaped tools were all around us. I wonder if you could faithfully reproduce the mutilated corpse discovered at the end of the Meiji era with the tools found in this place. I want to deny it. I don't want to admit that something so terrible could have happened at all. Even so, they were so strange, so terrifying, these tools, and as if they had seen through my attempt to escape from them, they did nothing but ridicule me silently. So that creepy incident, what was it in the end? The author says that regarding Onigafuchi village, Onigafuchi's village's dreadful customs, they survive into the post-Meiji days, and that perhaps they lasted until around the beginning of the Showa period. Okay. This corpse, which at a glance had been brutally killed after a period of torture, in actuality, however, it was the terrifying, pitiful sacrificial remains of the man-eater's terrifying feast. The corpse was just leftovers. It was so fantastic, so strange that it didn't feel real. Was this an extension of the legends too? It happened in the Meiji area, though which is just too recent to be called a legend. Also, there is a newspaper clipping right here suggesting it. Okay, but even if it really happened, it was a long time ago, right? I mean, the Meiji era ended 100 years ago. That's all. Only 100 years ago. Besides, it kept happening even after the beginning of the Showa period. Like with the uproar with the post-war canned flesh instance. Oh, I apologise. Post-war canned flesh incident. That's new. That story was taboo, wasn't it? Shion-san immediately stopped talking as if worried about Shion. Shion briefly looked somewhat angry, but that expression soon disappeared. Huh? Takano-san, what did you just say? Canned flesh? Just then, there was a huge creaking noise. Everyone whipped around to look. It was Tomitake-san who had opened the door slightly. Ha 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 ha. Did I startle you? Oh, Jiro-san, could you not resist seeing inside? This is a splendid treasure trove of torture devices. I'll pass on that. I'm bad with this sort of thing by nature. Takano-san held her stomach and had to muffle her laughter, as if she was wanting to make a comment about his masculinity. In any case, the dance and ceremony are over and people are going to the stream. The festival will be over within minutes. Oh, that's no good. My Barakon is such a good listener that I couldn't help telling stories. Rather you not mention me in a place like this. Jiro-san, could you wait out front? I want to take a few pictures. There are actually a lot of tools I'd like to bring home, but we obviously can't do that. God, imagine if she could take them. Takano-san took a camera out of her paper bag and began to snap photographs. She looked like she was having fun, like she was on a scavenger hunt. Heiji-kun, are you leaving too? I've seen enough. Leon, you good too, right? Let's get out of here. I want some fresh air. I agree. Let's leave. I did feel a bit of hesitation at leaving Takano-san by herself in this darkness. When I thought about it though, I realised that whatever kinds of evil spirits and ghosts lurked in the darkness, none of them could hold a chance to how scary she was. Even if a phantasm were to appear, she'd be overjoyed and flash a camera at it. It seemed like Shion shared my somewhat rude mental images. We exchanged glances and smiled painfully. We left Takano-san there, bathed in her strobe of camera flashes, and decided to leave the festival storehouse.